Welcome to the number one podcast covering Michigan State basketball. The Final Four is not on the schedule. Join Rod and me, Eric, as we dive deep into the Spartans to get you prepared for every game. Subscribe today for in-depth recruiting updates and fantastic interviews with today's important college basketball personalities like Robbie Hummel.
Thanks for having me. I have listened to your guys' podcast numerous times on drives throughout any Midwestern Big Ten city. So I am big fans of your guys' work.
Jay Billis.
And next time, hey, if anybody in Michigan wants a December tea time, call me. You wimps won't show up, but I'll be there. I'll be there and play in the cold. And Izzo will be in front of the fire with hot chocolate.
Coaches Thomas Kelly.
No problem. Glad to be back, man. Glad to be back.
Mike Garland.
You just can't sit there and trade twos for threes. You can't do it. You're going to lose. Coming down the stretch, you're going to lose.
And more. You won't find better coverage of Spartan hoops than you will get here. For both the casual and hardcore fan, come along as we take you for a green and white ride. Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod, here to talk about MSU's commanding win in the opening round of the NCAA tournament against Mississippi State, 69-51. We'd like to thank all of you who support the show by subscribing, sharing, and recommending to others. And a special thanks to all of you who appreciate the content enough to support us with one-time gifts or recurring gifts. If you'd like to contribute to the show, head on over to our support page to find ways to help. That's at tffinots.com/support. Thanks also to all of you who entered our bracket challenge. This year, we ended up with 116 entries. I contacted Troy from the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids, and he wrote back saying that he chose not to fill out a bracket this year because the last time he didn't fill a bracket was 2019. So he's hoping maybe get a little superstitious there, that maybe it'll work out for the best. Also, my wife is a pediatrician and had a well child check today with the dad who brought the kid in. As many of you know, most of the time you bring your kids in every year. Well, last year he was really angry because it was scheduled for the first day of the tournament and he had to leave, watching the games. And of course, his wife booked it for the exact same time 1 year later, which is a Thursday, the first Thursday of the NCAA tournament. So he was on the phone, I guess, and quite upset, saying there's no way in God's green earth that this is going to happen again. And they'd pull him away from the bar. So it brings some weird stuff happens. And I will only add, personally, it's so much better if Michigan State's going to play early, that they win. I mean, obviously. But it just throws a whole damper on the first 2 days if Michigan State's out right away. So it was very nice. Now it's actually stress-free to watch these first two days, and so it's kind of nice. So as for the game itself, pretty stress-free game, I thought, for an NCAA matchup. After our breakdown, I feel pretty confident that this was a team Michigan State could handle pretty easily. But then, I started looking at other sources, reading Jim Combroni, some other, Graham Couch and others, and I got a lot more concerned and worried. But this game really was never in doubt. I mean, the Spartans led wire to wire. The game was mostly in the 5 to 10 point range until late when Michigan State finally put the Bulldogs away. The only semi-concerning point I thought of the game was near the end of the first half, where Michigan State, I think, had a 12-point lead, and then a couple turnovers, and it got cut down to 5. But then Malik Hall hit that big bucket at the buzzer at the end of the first half to kind of snatch away momentum and heading into halftime. And really, the second half was never really close. It was, and you never, at least I never felt like Mississippi State was really up for the task to even take over. That they just didn't look very good. And I don't know if that was, I think it's partly a reflection of Michigan State playing really well defensively, but Mississippi State just, they didn't look very connected. It did remind me a lot, I know we talked about it before, it did remind me a lot of that LSU game a couple years ago, where they just looked like a kind of a disorganized team, and they just did not seem to play well as a team.
Well, I think they're better coached than that, or more coherent than that LSU team was. Mm-hmm. I also don't think they're as physically talented as that team was.
Right.
But but that said, yeah, I think you did see occasionally the lack of discipline that we talked about as potentially being something that would show up, come to pass. And Michigan State took advantage of it. But I really think the key to this game came, and there were a lot of great elements about the way Michigan State played. I completely concur with what you said about the nature of how that game unfolded, that you just didn't really feel like Michigan State was ever in position where they were likely to lose it. But I think the tone was set in the first 10 minutes or so. Michigan State, for all the grief, and look, a lot of it deserved, no argument, but for all the grief that Michigan State's big men took this year, man, did they step up with a defensive effort
Yeah.
in this game. Because, look, their kid,
Smith?
no, yeah, Smith. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Tolu Smith.
Tolu Smith, yeah.
He's the guy. He was the guy we picked, as the key player, the guy to keep in the gutter.
Right.
And they did that. They did that with outstanding post defense. And it wasn't just one-on-one. I thought Michigan State's doubling game was as good and connected as it's been at any point this season. I mean, I really thought they brought the hammer in this one, and Mississippi State rarely. Now, they did occasionally get a good look, and there were times in the second half where their guards were able to break down Michigan State off the dribble and find guys cutting off the baseline for layups or dunks. That happened a few times. But by and large, the way Michigan State handled Mississippi State's interior players was, I thought, the ultimate tone setter.
Yeah.
And then a lot of things flowed from that. The way Michigan State rebounded, the way they were able to, and I didn't look at we'll see what the final stats were. And, they only had 10 fast break points, but I thought Michigan State really did push the ball. They played, and even when they were in the half court, they played at a tempo that was necessary and appropriate in this game. They obviously shot the ball well. They did a lot of good things, but man, to me, you start with that defense.
Yep.
And particularly the post defense, but also the way the guards contained Mississippi State's guards for, until portions of the second half, it got a little loose. But that to me was the key to the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think it's, Malik Hall is a fifth-year senior, whatever you want to call him, grad student or whatever the designation is, but he definitely knows the defense well, and he had a really great shows doubles for like 2 seconds and then comes up and forces the ball out. And then you have plenty of time to get out to, who the guy he was guarding. So it was really smart. I guess I almost don't even call it a double because I feel like a double you have to sit there for a while. But maybe it's definitely a double team. But
No, they doubled. But the other thing was, and this is usually something you will see with teams that are effective in playing that way, is if you vary the timing where it's coming from. And they did a great job of that. So sometimes they wouldn't send it. And then sometimes they'd send it on the touch, on the post touch. And sometimes they might wait until the guy took a dribble.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was varied. And so Mississippi State's bigs could never really get a consistent approach locked in.
Yeah.
With how they had to play this. And that had a lot to do with it too. Malik was definitely the guy who was doing the majority of that. But, the other thing, which I think we said in the Minnesota game, and it definitely held true in this one. This was a game where truly, I thought just about everybody who played for Michigan State made contributions.
Yep. I agree.
This was a game where you saw a lot of guys. I mean, obviously, I talked about the fives. Madi Sissoko. I mean, it's nice that he did this for Michigan State. It's especially nice that he gave me, what is it now, 1.5 point
yeah,
lead?
You got almost. We need to go to the Sweet 16 for me to catch you now. Yeah, it's rough.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But that's the really important part. But no, I mean, the way that he played. Jackson Kohler did some good things. I thought Carson Cooper, he didn't put up much in the way of stats, but I thought he was really good the way he played defensively.
Yeah.
I mean, Xavier Booker made some big contributions and not just shooting the ball. I mean,
he didn't do much shooting the ball, but it was definitely elsewhere. Yeah.
No. Well, he hit a three and he obviously had that bucket early kind of as a follow-up.
Yeah.
In a semi-transition possession. But yeah, just not even sometimes stuff that he didn't get a statistical credit for, like deflecting a ball that somebody else gets on a rebound attempt, you know? I mean, just a great, great contribution from him, you know? And then obviously the guards, I mean, the three starters were all really, really good. And Trey had some uncharacteristically loose moments with the basketball, which really was true of the whole team. One of the worst turnover games they've had all season.
For sure, yeah.
But still stepped up and hit some shots and played some defense. So even in a day where he wasn't doing the things we normally come to expect of him, hey, he contributed, you know?
Yeah.
So really was a really good team effort. And to say, I would say if I had to come up with one word to describe that game for Michigan State, it would probably be control.
Yep.
They had, and that doesn't go for their own turnovers so much, but other than that, they were in control over the course of that game. You know, it never felt like they were threatened. It never felt like the moment was getting too big for them. They just they got out early with that 5-0 lead right out of the chute, and just sort of gave Mississippi State the highs.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, had it not been for the turnovers and the sloppy play, and you know, I would say a number of those turnovers were not forced.
Could have been a 30-point win.
Yeah, although I suppose Mississippi State had a number of just, you know, where they're just thrown into the stands. Yeah, that the turnovers at the very end of that first half where Trey had 2 lobs that he missed, definitely made the game a little bit tighter. Although again, never really felt like the game was threatened. But you're like, well, this is, you know, concerning that you sort of controlled it. Now you're kind of letting it slip away. But that big bucket by Malik, I think, was pretty important going into halftime.
Huge. Yeah. Absolutely. Because they had, if I remember the sequence correctly, I think they were up 11. And then, what's his name? Hubbard, I think, hit 2 straight threes.
Yeah, it could be.
Or the team hit 2
they had
straight
2 threes, yeah.
I know that much.
Because they cut it to 5.
And so all of a sudden it's 5. And you're like, oh, you know, we've done all this work. We've controlled the half. And now they're within, you know, it's a 2-possession ball game. And Malik goes down, not an easy shot in traffic, but, you know, he did what you're supposed to do in those situations, which is even if you're kind of careening around, if you can square your body,
you're
going to give yourself a good chance to make that shot. And he did that perfectly on that play. It looked harder than I think it actually was for him, because when he got himself in the air, he was squared up. And just, okay, bing, bang, boom, hits the bank shot. They're up 7 at the break. And all of a sudden they get a little bit of that momentum back in their corner going into halftime. And I agree with you. I think that was actually a big, big moment.
Well, and they get the ball back to start the second half too. And so I think they went up 9. And so it was almost already double digits before Mississippi State got the ball back again. So it's kind of
absolutely.
You know, I want to say the way the team looked, the way the guards played, Walker, Hogard, and Akins, that's really pretty much what we expected this season. And we really hadn't seen it where all 3 of them play well. And yet they all played well in this game.
I pointed out that Minnesota game in the Big Ten tournament they did.
You're right. That's true.
Although I don't think it's been rare.
Yeah, I guess with Akins, did he hit a lot of threes in that game too? I don't remember. I guess he's 3 of 8 this time. But
he didn't hit a lot.
He did everything
they
else.
Only got 8 attempts. They only got 8 attempts, but everybody played well, and Trey did too in that game, and that's been a rarity. I mean, we really haven't seen it very often, and this game absolutely was another example of that. I mean, if you want, you know, again, the turnover numbers were critical for Michigan State, and they prevented this from even being a more comfortable win. But, you know, if I look at it, I mean, AJ had 5. God, Malik had 5.
Yeah, he got stripped.
And Malik, those were the 2 guys who really struggled, and that was. You know, both of those guys, I think, suffered from making one fundamental mistake that I was surprised by. We talked about it in the pregame, that Mississippi State, it was weird. They have this strange dichotomy between turnovers that they generate overall and steals that they are able to generate.
Right.
And the steals, normally there's a close correlation between those 2 numbers. In this case, there isn't. They generate a lot of steals, but their turnover numbers overall are not that high. Well, today, what was it? 16 turnovers for Michigan State.
Yeah, 9 of them
and
steals.
Mississippi State had 9 steals. That's a little, you wouldn't have expected quite that kind of split, but Michigan State contributed to a lot of that by throwing balls out of bounds. But the other thing I was going to say was in Hall especially, but also AJ's case, this is a team with active hands. We know that much, right? And if you're facing a team like that, and by the way, Mississippi State had exactly the same problem against Michigan State.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to be dribbling. You don't want to over dribble in a phone booth in tight quarters, because if you've got teams with active hands and those guys are active help defenders, you're going to get stripped. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, Malik suffers from that in general anyway, AJ to some extent too, where you just kind of see it coming.
Yeah.
They're over dribbling and you just know there's a turnover about to happen. And so you would have hoped that wouldn't have occurred in this game. But again, it didn't cost MSU. So that was the good part.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's go into our segments here. We'll begin with the Brothers Adjust Your Gutters, the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter. Again, I was going to say it's spring, although I think we're going to get 6 inches of snow tomorrow, and which is a big happy birthday to me, by the way. So I get the day off, so it's kind of nice. It doesn't usually snow my birthday, but I guess we're going to get it tomorrow. Anyway, so that snow will become water, which has to get off your roof and away from your house. So make sure you have the Brothers Adjust Your Gutters doing important stuff like making sure gutters are operational. Make sure they're not filled with leaves. Maybe you'll get a leaf guard on. They can come out any type of weather, any time of the year. So right now they are available. So get a jump on the spring here and get them taking care of that stuff, that problem you've had, whether it's your downspouts, just need something fixed up, or maybe just entirely replaced. Just sort of depends whatever you need. So contact them on the east side or the west side of the state. Kurt and Greg will do fantastic work. You won't regret it. 10% off if you mention Final Four when you get your estimate. You can find that at the support page at thefinalfoursunontheschedule.com/support. And as you prefaced before, Michigan State's player needed to keep in the gutter was Tolu Smith. He's their big center, 27 minutes, only 5 field goal attempts. He was 3 for 5 from the line. He had 2 rebounds, 1 offensive, an assist, 4 turnovers, and a steal, finished with 9 points. I mean, not only did they keep him in the gutter, I think they put him in the sewer. I mean, he was pretty much neutralized entirely this game.
Fantastic play by Michigan State's fives in keeping him down. As I say, I think it was ultimately the way this played out. The biggest key to this game is the way that they handled him, because we're talking about guy that's their second leading scorer, leading rebounder, and his impact was muted, to say the least. So just great. And it wasn't, believe me, if you watch that game, and I'm assuming everybody listening to this did, it wasn't just him not playing well. Michigan State put him there.
Yeah.
Michigan State did the best job they've done against a quality big man maybe this entire year.
Probably. Yeah. No, I think I can't imagine. I can't think of any other time they were better. And the greatest thing about it, too, is the doubles came so fast and they left so quickly that it wasn't like they're leaving shooters wide open all over the floor. I mean, Mississippi State wasn't able to do anything with the doubles. And so that's what was so impressive about the performance there defensively.
Exactly. And we kind of knew that was likely, because this is a team that really struggles turning the ball over, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised to see that, which was when Michigan State put their players in a position where they had to make choices. They were often enough going to make a bad choice. and that's exactly what happened.
All right, so let's talk about the player that Michigan State, brought to you by the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. You had a 1.5 point lead on me going into the game. And as you mentioned before, too, that Madi Sissoko comes up with 9 rebounds in only 17 minutes of play, 2 of them offensive. He was fantastic again. But he had a couple fouls, I suppose, but 2 points in that dunk, a block and a steal too. He was really good. In general, Michigan State from a rebounding perspective was excellent this game, and they really did that. I guess they weren't. I guess I would say excellent. They're very good, because excellent would be they'd really neutralized Mississippi State, but they didn't let Mississippi State get going too much. And so anyway, very impressive by Madi, and Malik Hall did well, but he only had 5.
Yeah, and look, this is 2 straight games where we've seen Marty for the first time this year, really playing with some abandon, playing freely, as if he doesn't have any weight on him. He's not playing overcautiously. He's just going out and playing hard and throwing his body around and competing. And that Marty Sissoko can impact a game.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did against Purdue. And that's exactly what he did in this game. So, well, next one up, which we'll talk about in another episode coming right up, you got another high-quality big man coming down the pike in North Carolina's Armando Bacot. So they're going to need him again. Look, I think it's very clear Michigan State, to compete in that game against North Carolina, will need some of what Marty Sissoko can give them. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I almost think Marty is better coming off the bench because he does not feel like he has to protect himself from fouling.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Like, I don't
exactly.
think, like, I think, but I think that's the difference is before he felt like he had to be on the floor and he had to prevent, because that was always a big thing coming into last year, right? The guy gets 5 fouls in like 6 minutes.
Right.
Well, he's not going to be able to play.
Right.
What are you going to do at the 5? Well, that sort of been shifted away from him completely now. Now it's just like, go out there and just do what you want to do. And if you foul, whatever. I think it's been a huge thing.
I think that's some of it. But on the other hand, if I'm playing devil's advocate to that, I could say, well, he got moved out of the starting lineup a while ago.
Well, yeah.
And he hasn't been playing like this. He hasn't come close to this. So it's not just that. I think, but I do think the effect is exactly the same thing I was just talking about. The effect is if Marty Sissoko plays freely and he's just looking to attack the basketball coming off the rim or the backboard, that's a Marty Sissoko that can help this team because he is a pure rebounder unlike any other they've got on the roster. I mean, at his best, playing this way, you say, remember, we joke about it all the time. First half of the season in our little competition here, Marty Sissoko was the automatic first pick. Well, that was for a reason.
Yeah.
You know? And he's doing that now again over these last 2 games, and hopefully it's going to continue.
Yeah, and not to forget about him, Jaden Akins with a really great game. He had 7 rebounds. So that was the tracking down. I mean, his best game of the season easily, I think.
I was going to say, I think Izzo said it might be his best game at Michigan State.
Yeah, maybe.
It's up there. When you take everything into consideration, did he hit threes? Yes. Did he punish them off the dribble? Yes. Show his athleticism, both ends. Mm-hmm. Defend well. I'm not just talking about that crazy blocked shot, but just generally, was he good defensively? Yes. I mean, I think that play he made defensively, and then the one where he went to the rim and dunked.
Oh yeah, that was
are
great.
the two most athletic plays he's made all year, and they were in the same game, one at each end. Yeah. I think it was his best game of the season, for sure.
Yeah, it'd be sure nice if we have that Jaden Akins throughout the rest of the tournament. If so, boy, I tell you what, this team is gonna be kind of scary.
Let's just take a half step back here. Say, okay, well, Michigan State was ranked number 4 in the preseason. Why were they ranked number 4? They were ranked number 4 because people thought their 3 guards were going to be collectively as good as it gets. Today, they were that.
Yeah.
They thought Malik Hall was going to be a veteran stabilizing presence at the 4. They got that. They thought the 5s would be good enough, not dominant scorers, but good enough to win within the context of Michigan State's team. What'd they get today? They absolutely got that.
Yeah.
And then this highly touted freshman class could maybe make a difference and make some plays here or there that put them over the top. Well, I would argue, with what Xavier Booker did today, they got at least some of that. Cohen Carr would have as well if Trey Holloman had been able to put a couple passes on the money.
Yeah, those dunks are both there.
We got that. So all of those elements, I see people say this stuff all the time, and I get it, but it also misses the point. This stuff about, well, Michigan State clearly wasn't the number 4 team. Yeah, no, really? You couldn't have figured that out by Thanksgiving? But that's not really the point. If you're trying to understand why they were ranked where they were and what their potential is, even today as we're talking, it's what you saw on that court against Mississippi State.
Yeah.
That's the team that people thought was, now you can argue, well, even the way they play today, is that really a top 5 team? Maybe, yeah. I would argue beating a quality NCAA tournament level SEC team by 18 points is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But in a game you controlled the whole way, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This Michigan State that we saw today, that's why people had them ranked where they did. It's exactly why.
Yeah.
And so if they can continue playing that way, if they get on a hot streak, which, is, I hate to say it because in some ways it devalues the sport, but it's also the reality. If you get on a roll at this time of year, you can really do damage in this tournament. And so that's what you have to hope for if you're a Michigan State fan, that it wasn't just, a one game, a one-off. But I would argue that this is now 3 games in a row that Michigan State has played fairly high-quality basketball. I thought they played very well against Minnesota. I thought they played well in losing against Purdue. And I thought they played really well today. So does that mean they're finding some consistency? I don't know. We'll find out on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, once again, thanks to Troy for not filling in a bracket so that Michigan State could get the win, and hopefully it works so you get all the way to the Final Four. So, yes, send your thanks along to Troy from the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Head on over to the Squeegee Squad and maybe get your windows washed. It's nice to have them clean so you can see outside. Now, tomorrow you'll just be looking at snow if you're out in the Grand Rapids area. But, a couple of days we'll have the nice spring weather to look out at. Well, maybe 2 weeks. It's Michigan after all. But head on over to our support page to find ways to get a hold of Troy and his team. They can do commercial, residential, high-rise, whatever it might be. No jobs too little or too small for their team at the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. All right, so let's move on to the keys to the game, brought to you by Nudge Printing. Nudge Printing providing all of the prizes for the bracket challenge. And, of course, Gabe is entered. You can look at all the entries right now. I haven't had a chance to look to see how anyone's doing. Totally bizarre scoring. You benefit from having upsets and higher seeds win games. So I don't know. I haven't even looked to see where I rank anywhere. I was doing pretty well through the first 4 games of the tournament, but I think Nevada kind of blew a 20-plus point lead as we're recording this. And
that was a big one for me because I've got Dayton winning, I think, one more game.
Oh, okay, that's good for you.
In addition to that, so that was very big for me.
Never count on Steve Alford. That's really what the saying should be.
That's a very words to live by, for sure. Yeah.
I remember back in Iowa, we were so excited when Steve Alford came in and this guy named Kirk Ferentz, no one ever heard of, and everyone was all upset about Kirk Ferentz. And then Alford flamed out, and everyone hated him within a few years. They couldn't stand the guy. And Ferentz, well, he's still there. So go figure.
I would argue, actually, that Steve Alford, and I've mellowed on him since he moved out of the Big Ten because I don't see him that much.
Yeah, right.
But I think he's also calmed down. But I would argue that his tenure at Iowa, he was among the most obnoxious opposing coaches I've ever seen.
Well, he was obnoxious to Iowa fans as well. So just so you know.
Yeah, he was awful. I still remember there had been a play I think it was in the first meeting of the season where Shannon Brown dunked on them and got fouled, and he did the now commonplace, Muscle Beach flexing pose. And then Iowa won the rematch, and Alford mimicked that pose at the end of the game. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, that's so
anyway.
Funny. Yeah, he was, the thing is, if you're a jerk in a small town, Iowa City is a very small town. I mean, adding Corville, it's like maybe 60,000. He actually, maybe I told the story before, but he actually stole a lawnmower from one of the lawnmower distributors.
Really? Wow.
Well, so what happened? This is a fairly well-known story. So he has a lawnmower. He asked him to borrow it. They said sure, and then they called him up and said, "Hey, we want a lawnmower back unless you want to buy it." He's like, "What? I thought it was a gift." And So they actually came and I can't remember what the story was. Somebody, they tricked his wife into letting them like service the lawnmower, and they just took it back. But
Wow.
Anyway, so small town, you don't get away with stuff like that. You can get away with stuff like that if you win, but he just had all kinds of problems there.
Yeah.
They won, but it was at a cost of like losing roster people and stuff. So anyway, let's talk about the keys to the game. Number one is play fast. Michigan State, I thought, at times played fast. I mean, certainly in their first half when they're establishing sort of the tempo and the pace. In the last 8 minutes, they really played slow. Like they were winding down. They were definitely just trying to, play
They were
the
trying
clock.
to squeeze.
Yeah.
They were trying to squeeze the game, and
it was smart.
You saw it was, but you also saw, I think, the efficiency dip a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because it doesn't, bleeding the clock down to 7 seconds, 6 seconds, and you're left with a guard trying to make a one-on-one move. It's just not. It's not where their strength is. I thought by and large, the activity level, playing with a purpose, ball movement, all of those things checked out pretty damn well.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't get a lot done transition. It was 10 points on the break. I think I would differ with that a little bit anecdotally. It seemed to me like they were a little better than that number suggests, but I'm reasonably happy with that. The concern that I had, and I will offer this as a key we didn't spend much time talking about up until now. In the pregame, we talked about Mississippi State really trying to keep you out of the middle.
Right.
So they want to get you. And look at the way their bigs played pick and roll coverage, right? Hard hedges, really trying to get the guards for Michigan State pushed to the sideline. And I thought Michigan State did a very good job for most of that game of not letting that happen and keeping the ball in the middle of the floor. And when you do that against Mississippi State, you will see breakdowns in that defense. And that's exactly what we saw, I think. Hogard was able to take advantage of that at times, going to the rim. They were also able to get a lot of drive and kick stuff to shooters by virtue of that. So that was a real quiet key in this game, in my opinion, was that Michigan State did not let Mississippi State's attempts to ice them work on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and I think at times that made it really open up the middle of the court so that it only, the big was able to really clear the path for Hogard to get to the rim, or I think, Walker a couple times too. So, and I think, there are a lot of rebounds that went to, say, Akins, where it's because that the Mahdi or Carson were just blocking out their other big to get a rebound too. So they got, I think even Tyson had an offensive rebound too, just because all the bigs are occupied by the Michigan State bigs.
Yep.
So the second key to the game is defensive rebounding. This is one of those things where Michigan State was okay. Mississippi State, which is an excellent offensive rebounding team, they've had a 38% rebound rate, which is really good. It was neutralized by Michigan State having a 40.7% offensive rebounding rate and with a better field goal percentage. So in that sense, it didn't matter so much that Mississippi State was getting those rebounds. So not a great job, but again, I think like we said before, I think it was enough that they prevented Mississippi State from getting any sort of demoralizing, advantage from just killing them on the boards or something.
I am honestly a little bit surprised at that number.
I didn't think it was that bad.
I hadn't looked at it until now. They did have some segments in the second half where, over the last 10 minutes, I think, where they had a possession or maybe even a couple of them where they got like 2 or 3 offensive rebounds in the possession. Those moments did happen, and I think that inflated that number, because I'm with you. I felt most of that game, I felt MSU did a really good job neutralizing them. But you're right. The way MSU was able to offensive rebound was enough to offset it. So it didn't matter. As I say, I'm a little bit surprised by that 13 offensive rebound number, because anecdotally watching the game, it didn't feel that bad.
Well, and 3 of those offensive rebounds were out of bounds. Actually, 5 of the rebounds for Mississippi State were just a sideline, rebound.
Dead ball,
and that may make it feel like maybe there's not as much momentum, I guess, when that happens as much. Anyway,
Yeah,
I thought it was good enough, right? I think that's the key.
Yes. Yes.
So the third key to the game was turnovers. And this I was a little surprised. We've talked about already. I think Michigan State was a little sloppy with the ball. I mean, like I said, they kind of dribbled into trouble sometimes, especially Malik dribbling in traffic, which we've seen him occasionally get kind of suckered into his slow sort of post moves that are as he's setting someone up, and then the guy comes in and just snatches the ball, which happened a number of times this game. Of course, Mississippi State had quite a few turnovers as well. I think it was 16 for Michigan State and 15 for Mississippi State, so
Correct.
About a wash.
Correct.
One would have expected Michigan State to have an edge there, and that's why you'd expect them to have an edge on the fast break points, but they didn't because they were pretty even. So I think it's, in many ways, this is probably a good game for Mississippi State as far as turnovers go, because they only had 15, which it's got to be below their average. They must be average almost 20, I'm sure, with as high as their turnover rate is.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. All of that's true. The turnovers were even, which is a negative for Michigan State because you expected to have an advantage in this game, right? Mississippi State had 9 steals to Michigan State 7. So the live ball turnovers, Mississippi State has a slight edge. But you know what's funny? If you look at points off turnovers,
yeah.
Michigan State with a 29-19 advantage.
Yeah.
So that tells you a couple things. That tells you that Mississippi State was not able to derive any benefit or edge from their slight edge in steals, which would normally be the thing you'd be worried about, that those live ball turnovers turn into easy transition baskets. They had a few of them.
Yeah, sure.
But they didn't have an edge there. And it goes to Michigan State's general offensive efficiency in this game.
Yeah.
Because even off Mississippi State dead ball turnovers, that's almost, so 15 turnovers, 29 points off those turnovers. That's just barely below 2 points per turnover.
Yeah.
Think about that.
That's a field goal per turnover, basically. Yeah.
That's a crazy good clip. Crazy good. And again, we know most of those were not Michigan State getting a steal and going in for a layup or a dunk.
Right.
So it speaks to the overall efficiency that Michigan State played with. I mean, you look at it, 50% from the floor, 43.5% from three. That's pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
And all those second chances they got as well with that offensive rebounding.
Yeah, it's interesting. Michigan State had 10 second chance points, which is not a lot considering they had 11 rebounds. Yet Mississippi State had 13 offensive rebounds, and they only ended up with 7 second chance points. So they were averaging about half a point, and Michigan State was averaging about a point per rebound. So again, a big differential there as well.
Yep.
So the fourth key to the game was the threes. We thought that Michigan State had to do well. Mississippi State gave up a lot of threes for the year, but not very good percentage. Well, they gave up a lot, and they gave up a really high percentage. So Michigan State shot 43.5%. They were 10 for 23. I mean, it was lethal. And then Mississippi State, the contrary, they only shot 22%. They were 6 of 27. So, I mean, it was a massive advantage for Michigan State there.
Yeah, and here's the deal. So let's start with the Michigan State end of it first.
Yeah.
We said, hey, this team does a great job limiting an opponent's success from three, but they actually give up a lot of attempts. So what can you derive from that? Normally, we say the most controllable aspect of three-point defense is limiting attempts, because once an opponent gets a shot up, there's a luck, especially from three.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a lot of a luck element to it. But when a team has as much volume as Mississippi State had in terms of shots against them from three, and the percentage is that low, I personally think you have to start crediting that defense at least to an extent.
Yeah.
For that lack of opponent success, right? The more data you have, the more robust or more accurate you would normally find the results to be, right?
Yep.
But we said in this game, okay, they're probably going to get those attempts. They got to stick them. And boy, did they stick them.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 for 23, brilliant performance to get for Michigan State in any game, because they don't take a ton of threes.
No.
But for them to get into double digits in threes made, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. And that's something that for as long as they stick around in this tournament, I suspect we're going to have to see replicated if they're to continue to have success.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. The last one was Davis Smith too, with the shot clock going up.
That was fantastic. but even before that, I mean, we talked about Jaden Akins, but it was far, far, far from a one-man show.
Because Tyson was 3 of 6. And Trey was, they said 1 of 1. I thought he had one that was like almost an air ball that he threw at the end of the shot clock or something. Booker was 1 of 4. And then AJ was 1 of 2. So Malik missed his 1. So, a lot
of guys.
Yeah, a
lot of guys. And that's what you want to see. When you have, 4 guys made threes in this game?
6.
That's six guys.
Yeah. 4 of them made 1.
Wait, how can that be?
4 of them made
Who
1,
did?
and 2 guys made 3.
Who were the 4 who made 1?
Hogarth,
Trey,
Holloman, Booker, and Smith.
Okay, right. Davis Smith. I'm sorry. Yeah, so there you go. That's really spreading the wealth.
Yeah.
And it's a key. And then on the other end, Mississippi State they were worse than they normally are, but I give Michigan State credit for that. But we said 2 things about them. They shoot a poor percentage, not horrible, but below average, and yet they still take a lot of them. Well, what did we see? 20, what was it? 20,
27.
How many attempts?
6 for 27.
27 attempts. 6 for 27. Yeah, that's too many. I don't get it. And after watching them, now Michigan State had something to do with it because they were having so much difficulty getting something consistent flowing.
They were not good
done
looks
in the post. But even so, that's a lot of attempts for a team that doesn't shoot it well.
I got to imagine part of that is strategies with the offensive rebounding off of them too, and so they can afford to take those. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Not watching.
No, probably that's probably part of the equation. But honestly, for a team with bigs the caliber of what they have, and they've got some guys who can do damage. It was a little surprising to me when I was going through their profile and watching them play a little bit before the end of this game. And then you see it. I mean, I think Jeffries hit a couple today, but basically that was a one-man show.
Yeah.
It was Hubbard. It was Hubbard or bust. And what was Hubbard, like 3 for 10?
3 for 11, yeah.
I mean, 3 for 11. So he didn't shoot well.
No.
He had a little moment where he got hot, but he struggled. So you saw the problems that were there in the data manifest on the court. Bad combination. Don't shoot really well percentage-wise, and yet you take a lot of them. That's not good.
Yeah. Well, it all adds up to 51 points, which is pretty dreadful performance.
Right.
That's got to be way below their average. I can't remember what it is, but definitely more than 50 points a game.
And keep in mind, Michigan State is now up to the number 6 defensive efficiency team in the country after that performance.
Yeah. Well,
so
I mean,
let's give Michigan State credit for a lot of it.
Yeah, I think those threes, most of them were not open. I mean, you could force a 3 anytime you want, but they weren't very good looks. There were a couple, but not many.
Absolutely.
All right, so the 5th and final key to the game was toughness. I don't think there's any question Michigan State showed up with plenty of toughness in this game. I wouldn't say that Mississippi State looked soft or that they looked like Michigan State just took it at them. But Michigan State just fought and battled really well against them. And I don't know. I thought it was pretty even there.
Let me ask you a question. In that first half especially, did you feel that was a physical game?
No.
Wasn't. I agree.
There weren't even any fouls hardly. It was a beautiful game.
Well, I don't know if you caught this. They said early in the second half that was the first NCAA tournament game, I think, in 9 years that didn't have a free throw shot either way in the first half.
Oh, wow.
Or in a half. I was very surprised by that. And I think in the second half, Mississippi State made more of a concerted effort to try to get the ball to the rim, to try to let their size and their physicality impact things. And, to varying degrees, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I thought Michigan State more than held up their end of the bargain in that regard. But if I was surprised by anything in this game, it's that I thought Mississippi State would be much more consistently physical than they were, because that's the kind of team they were in the regular season. But that first half, they didn't bring it. Second half, yeah. First half, nope.
Yeah, I think that was reflected in the boards, right? I mean, the fact that Michigan State really at least held their own, or in some ways, I felt like they were
Michigan
sort of
State had an edge.
They just look faster.
I
mean, they just look faster and more together in that first half. It's almost hard to pinpoint exactly what it was, because I don't think if Mississippi State didn't show up. Maybe if someone's a Mississippi State fan, they'll say, well, our team just, played terrible, the flat or something. But I don't know. I mean, you're right. It wasn't super physical, but part of that is that they just didn't make it physical, like you said. I mean, I think that they had opportunities.
They didn't.
But they were like double teamed, and so they'd pass out of it, and they wouldn't have an open shot anyway, and then there would be a shot put up, and Michigan State would be in position to get the rebound and beat them to some loose balls too. So I don't know.
I would like to see the stats, the splits on points in the paint in the first half versus the second for Mississippi State, because I think you saw a lot more activity there in the second half.
For sure.
And honestly, that's where you started to see it show up a little bit. I didn't think defensively they ever really imposed a physical price on Michigan State. But offensively, once they started to do more of that, try to get the ball downhill, try to get it to their post players, and not just bail out of those double situations, they had some success, not consistent success, because Michigan State still was defending well, but I was surprised if I was surprised by anything in this game, that was the biggest surprise, was that they didn't bring more physicality earlier.
Yeah, and I felt the one thing about Michigan State, they had a number of turnovers in the first half, but it never looked like it's never like they were having trouble getting their shot. There were a couple 30-second violations, so I guess your shot clock problems. But for the most part, I think Michigan State got to kind of whatever shot they wanted, whenever they wanted it. I didn't think they were, again, aside from just a few possessions, they did not really seem like they were struggling out there, which surprised me. I expected Mississippi State to cause more trouble for them, but they have lots of open shots for threes, which is why they shot 43%. All right, so that's brought to you, of course, by Nudge Printing. Head on over to nudgeprinting at nudgeprinting.com. You get 20% off. You mentioned Final Four. That's just one word. Type it in as the coupon code on checkout for all the great apparel. They have the Dunking Gruff now, so if you want to get that, it's probably a good time for that sort of t-shirt. Any other final thoughts of this game as Michigan State now moves on to the second round, where they play North Carolina, who defeated Wagner by, I don't know, like 30 points or something like that. And a game that was close for about, closest for like 15 minutes, and then they sort of just pulled away.
No, I think other than to just say it was in a year where we haven't really been able to say this very much, it was just so refreshing and frankly, almost exhilarating to see Michigan State play a game that they controlled.
Yeah.
That way. That was, and to do it the way that we're used to seeing Michigan State teams do it. They defended well. They ran offense. They made shots. They competed. They were good on the glass. They took away really a critical player for the other team for the most part. Just all the things that we're used to seeing them doing. So that was really, really great to see. Shows you that despite all the criticism, I guess the guy running the sidelines over there does still have a lever or two he can pull, right?
Yeah, it looks like it is funny how he just got to gets people, focusing on this. And, I think for the seniors especially, maybe they were just not as focused this year. I don't know. I mean, it's just one game, so we can get ahead of ourselves a little too much.
Yeah,
but
it does. No, it's not a referendum season. Don't get me wrong. But the point is, you have to know that a Tom Izzo coach team always has a chance of pulling a game like this out of the hat. I mean, you do. And they've also, by the way, got a chance of doing it again on Saturday. They absolutely do. This was, by the way, the 17th game in his career that he's won as the lower seed, which is the most in history. No coach has ever done that. Now, there are two sides to that coin.
Why are you in the 9th seed
instead of
5? Yeah.
Right. Why are you why are you underachieving in the regular season? Okay. But the other side of that is, hey, if you're the lower seed, you're supposed to lose. And he's not losing. At least a lot of these games he's not losing. So pretty remarkable to have that record. And, that's the dynamic come Saturday. So we'll see. There's some other dynamics in play there, too, that don't cut Michigan State's way. But we'll talk about that in the preview.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, again, just check out our support page if you want to help support us or the sponsor of the show at thefinalfoursontheschedule.com/support. If you want to check out your brackets, you can always head up to the contest page to get a pool host and see where you're ranking. And then I guess we'll see you back here real soon as we have a quick turnaround as we get ready for the second round with North Carolina with a chance to go to the Sweet 16. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.